We've done it. We've finally figured it out. All these years of theorizing on the origins of FNAF, the OG animatronics. Well, I think this has solved it. And it all came from one trailer, which was only 45 seconds long. But those 45 seconds have solved years of theory work. And it comes from the trailer of Secret of the Mimic. Now, immediately straight off the bat, we're shown the Mimic. And how do we know it's the Mimic? Well, it's basically simple. They have the same eye color as the Mimic we see in Security Breach. Not to mention, this game is called Secret of the Mimic. Therefore, this is the Mimic. Problem solved. But you might be asking the question, what has this got to do with the unknown FAZBEAR member? Well, everything. If you get to the end of this trailer and slow it down frame by frame, you can see ingrained and burned into the tape the date of the footage, 1979. This predates anything we've seen in a FNAF game. Or does it really predate everything we've seen? Because let's not forget, we know that Fall Fest was set in the 1970s and the 1980s respectively. And the date 1979 specifically has a huge importance in the novels. It's hugely implied that that's when Freddy's family diner opened. Does this mean then that this Jack-in-the-Box Mimic we see is the first iteration of the puppet? I mean, it's in a box, which is called the grandfather clock theme, and literally coincides with the Freddy family diner's opening. Well, in the novels anyway. Well, I believe the Mimic to be its own entity, nothing to do with the puppet, although the puppet's design is obviously inspired off the Jack-in-the-Box Mimic. But this Mimic's design is definitely one of the Jester suit. Now, the court Jester suit, if you're unaware, was actually a suit used by the Mimic to surprise his victims in the novels, and this court Jester suit also is confirmed to be a spring-lock suit. Looking at the trailer, this definitely looks like some type of Jester clown to me. You can imagine the massive smile on that Mimic costume right there. And then the puzzle pieces start falling into place. The Mimic was potentially one of the original members of the FAZBEAR gang. We'd have Spring Bonnie, Fredbear, and the Mimic, or in this case, could be the court Jester. And then things start to go wild because at FNAF Paper Pals on Twitter posted this reference. Now at first glance, you'd think this is nothing. And then I started digging deeper and deeper into this. I mean, in FNAF 2, we see 3 Paper Pals, 2 of them with huge significance, because one of them is clearly Fredbear, the other Spring Bonnie, but the third one doesn't really resemble anything at all. But then you look at the design of the faceplate, it has the same eyes as that Jack-in-the-Box Mimic, and also potentially the mouth. That's right, the Springlock suit in Sister location. Now, I did a video on that weeks ago, and I did briefly mention this, and now it's all coming together. Well, buckle in, because I hope you're ready for this. First off, how it connects to the Springlock suit in Sister location. Obviously, if it was an original mascot character like Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, predating Fredbear's family diner, it would need a suit for them to perform on stage, center stage even. Now, whether that's at Fall Fest or Circus Baby's Pizza World, they'll need a suit. And at the time, the suits were all Springlock. Because no Springlock accidents had occurred, they hadn't banned them. So they made a Springlock Jester suit, which obviously they would have based that design of that suit off the Mimic in the Mimic puppet box. And from there, you'd have the 3 originals performing on stage. The Jester, Fredbear, and Spring Bonnie. Now, the original band wasn't just Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Predating this, obviously 1979, there was 3 of them. The court Jester, which is referenced with this paper pal, Spring Bonnie, and Fredbear. But then something horrific must have happened for us never to hear about the Mimic again. And that's followed up further in the future because we see the same Mimic in Security Breach. And how do we know it's the same Mimic? This Mimic will be what, 50 years old from 1979 to 2030? That's a good 50 years. Well, believe it or not, there's evidence backed up throughout the games and from the developers themselves. Gregory in the Ruin DLC actually says that the Mimic's been down there a very long time.
That thing in the sinkhole tricked you. I really don't know what it is, but it's been trapped down here a really long time.
That's clue number 1. Clue number 2 is the location it's buried in is the FNAF Pizzeria Simulator, which we know was also the original FNAF location, meaning again it would have been buried in there. Take a look at MXES. That's also a very old machine, and in an interview with Steelwool, FNAF, or aka John, actually got them to expand on this, and they confirmed that MXES was a very old computer, like the computer we see in war games, WOPR.
Like a good example of like, hey, here's a supercomputer, right?
But it's old.
Before computers are like this big. It's not a modern computer.
No, it's not.
Right? The model just is not a modern computer.
No, it's not. It's
Right.
very old.
It looks old.
Right.
thus confirming that that computer we see existed way before Security Breach and was actually existed in the 1980s. This would mean that potentially that mimic from the 1980s, the one in the Jack in the Box, is the same mimic we see in Security Breach and has been locked away since then. Everything starts linking this together, but the main question is here, why would they have locked away the mimic for such a long period of time? And why was it never referenced again in the entirety of the FNAF franchise? Well, believe it or not, it actually could have been. We've only really got to look in detail at the latest game, Help Wanted 2. Well, obviously it's not the latest game Into the Pit is, but you know what I mean. We see Fall Fest, we see a carnival, and throughout the carnival aesthetic, when we're playing these minigames, the carousel, and the game with Carney, everything always seems to end in fire. I mean, they'd need a reason to even cancel Fall Fest to begin with, and they've gone along the lines of there was a huge fire, and it was obviously cancelled for that reason, right? Obviously behind the scenes, Steelwall obviously knows what they're doing with this fire, with the Fall Fest, with the mimic. What if the mimic had something to do with this fire? Or someone started the fire in order to purge the mimic? I mean, we've seen throughout the franchise, fire is a way to get rid of the spirits, to reset the spirits, to try and get rid of William Afton, to burn down pizzeria after pizzeria. What if this fire was caused by someone trying to purge the mimic? And it just so happened to be at the Fall Fest in 1979. And that's why Fall Fest was cancelled. We never seen it again. And the reason they could be doing this is the fact that the mimic actually went on some type of spree, caused some horrific acts, and they wanted to get rid of it. So then they scrub it completely out of the franchise's history, rebranding entirely as FAZBEAR Entertainment and Freddy Fazbear's Family Diner, completely wiping Fall Fest out of existence. It was never mentioned again because they completely shut it down. And this Fall Fest can then explain where Balloon Boy, Sun, Moon even, because they are obviously dated to be quite old, Circus Baby and Carney all originated from, not to mention the original cast, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, etc. I mean, on top of all this, Steelwall themselves even say that this is going back into the past. They tweeted on their own Twitter account, well, X as it's called now, they said, to see the future you must look into the past, or something along them lines. It'll be on screen now. All but confirming we're going back to the past to see the origins, revealing the secret of the mimic, which we've just basically unraveled ourselves. And we're forgetting something else completely here, the William and Henry angle. How are they going to fit into the story? Will we play as one of them, or will we play as somebody completely new? Mrs. Afton, perhaps? But believe it or not, there is another reference to the Jester suit in FNAF 6, when Lefty is in the lane. If you look behind him on the wall, there's a poster which seemingly features a puppeteer and what looks to be like a Jester and a Fredbear. Anyway, I thought it was worth just pointing that out. And further to this, I'd also like to just quickly point out the Paper Pals reference on Twitter. I saw that originally, and then doing research for this video, also seen it in Ride Toast, which I highly recommend checking out after this. So with all that being said, what do you think? I personally really enjoy this theory and love the origins of the Mimic. I think it makes total sense that he was one of the original FAZBEAR characters and how he can fit into Sister location. I don't believe him to actually be one of a Funtime animatronic. That doesn't make sense to me, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this theory down below. I'd also like to welcome my brand new channel members, William Plays 844 and Lauren C. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching till the very end, and share this with a fellow FNAF theorist. I'm Twisted, and stay safe out there, superstars.